Hello, and welcome to Google Partners Connect, broadcasting live from Mountain View, California. We're so glad you've joined us here today. My name is Aaron, and I'm part of the Partners Marketing team here at Google. Today, we have a great lineup of presenters here for you. They're here to tell you about the evolution of measurement in advertising and how AdWords reinvented it as we know it. Then, we'll take a closer look at some tips and strategies you can put into practice with your Google partner to make the most of your advertising budget. But before we get started, here are a few quick things to remember. First, the Google partners in the room can help answer your questions during or after our broadcast, and these folks are the cream of the crop. They've all been certified by Google to help you grow your business online. Next, join us for a live conversation on Twitter by using #PartnersConnect. Send us your photos, videos, aha moments, and of course, questions. We're dedicating the last 10 minutes of our broadcast today to a live Q&A session. Just remember to use #PartnersConnect when you ask. Now, it's my pleasure to turn things over to Jeff Montgomery. He's our Director of Mid-Market Sales in the Americas. He'll walk us through how advertising measurement has evolved and the importance of measuring your campaigns properly. Over to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Aaron, and welcome to Partners Connect Live. Let's jump right in. How many phones do you think this billboard sold? 100? 500? 3,000? The billboard is on 7th Avenue South in New York. Thousands of people are walking and riding by every day. Any guess actually would be inaccurate. We'll actually never know for sure. The billboard is a classic example of traditional advertising. Radio, print, television, they've never been easy to measure. While companies saw increases in people coming into their stores and saw increases in sales, they kind of had to have just faith that it was a good investment. As John Wanamaker said, "Half of my advertising is wasted, I just don't know which half." This was the status quo for a very long time. Then the web was born, digital emerged, and consumers embraced the internet. Online ads came forth. They were highly effective. Advertisers knew what their ROI was. It promised accurate ROI as a benefit. So for the first time ever, we knew exactly what the effect of our advertising had. We knew that digital was effective because we could measure it accurately. And we also knew how digital compared. So more ad dollars started moving to the web, as you know. This was light years ahead of traditional media. This essentially created an advertising revolution in this one-device world of desktop. Advertisers who quickly embraced it created competitive advantages for themselves. Their businesses grew dramatically. They invested and understood ROI. They were able to reinvest the profits in their business. They understood the implication of their ads on the consumer journey. Consumers, it was great for them too. They could go online, they could look at features, specifications, prices, they could read reviews all in one place at their fingertips. And then, in that one place, they made a purchase. At that moment in time, right when the purchase occurred, the advertisers saw it happen. They knew what the return was. They could adjust and optimize. It really was a revolution. It brought extra clarity and confidence to advertising that was never seen before. But guess what happened? Mobile phones came on the scene. It created a new channel. Advertisers expected that the return and the measurement were going to be the same. It was no longer feasible. Mobile and desktop couldn't be well connected. Mobile completely changed consumer behavior and the path to purchase. What do I mean by that? Mobile is ultra portable. We have them with us all the time. They're right next to us. It's the direct connection to the customer. It allowed the customer to have more immediacy and more control than they had ever had before. Consumers then started bouncing between devices, right? Whatever was more convenient for them. If you're at home, you use your tablet. If you're at work, you use your laptop or desktop. Consumers, as they bounced between, really complicated measurement, made it much more difficult. In the past, the desktop was used for everything, from research to reviews to inspiration, all the way to purchase. Now, in a year like 2017, the process looks incredibly different. So let's use an example of the evolution of the customer journey. You're on a bus, you're on your way to work, and you see that billboard with the Pixel. You're like, I actually need a new mobile device. Let me check it out. Now, this moment when you decide to pick up your mobile device and begin to make an educated decision about what you want to do could start in many different ways. I could say, what are the best rated smartphones? How does Google Assistant work? How great is the camera on Pixel? Then I get to the office Mobile is in my pocket, and I steal a few minutes during lunch, and I go on my laptop, do a little bit more research, compare the Pixel to other devices, but I couldn't complete the transaction. It's a pretty big decision. I get home in the evening, and I go directly to the Pixel website because when I was driving home, you know what? I'm going to try the Pixel. I've read good things. And so I go right to their website and I make the purchase. This is a new type of conversion. This went across screens and channels. Now advertisers need to connect the dots. These are called micro moments, and they have complicated the customer journey. People purchase across screens. 90% of people say that they go from one device to another every single day. I'm certain that most of you do. Digital also is the connective tissue between the online world and the offline world. It drives people in store. People now, when they go into a store, they have a pretty good idea of what they want, right? They've got the information at their fingertips. They have access to the world's information right on their digital device. Now, traditional ways of buying and learning from about a purchase and making that decision, such as a phone, it's still incredibly important. 30 billion calls were generated by search in 2013. 30 billion. Now, as consumers move seamlessly across devices, we need to consider the role that each of the devices plays along the path. I'm going to share with you 3 tips that will help you to connect the dots between these micro moments. Tip number 1, you got to measure across screens. 40% of people who research on the smartphone end up purchasing on the desktop. 90%, as I said, they're moving back and forth. Mobile is where they're starting in most instances, and then they're finishing on the desktop. Even if the sale doesn't happen on a mobile device, it's often starting. It's the direct connection. Also, mobile is where you're really going to get the engagement and the discovery, as I had mentioned, and then you complete that transaction someplace else. Consumers may also use the mobile device, right, using voice search to very quickly find directions to your business or to call. It's super simple. Find a auto repair shop near me, click a button, and I'm connected. These are must-measure moments. In fact, almost $1 trillion in U.S. retail sales were influenced by the mobile device last year alone. That's 1 trillion with a T. Tip number 2, you got to measure across channels. When people use mobile search to make a decision, they are 75% more likely to visit a store, right? You can see where mobile has become that connection between the offline world and the online world. 90% of people are more likely to call to make a purchase, and 51% are more likely to make a purchase in general when they start on the mobile device. Those are pretty powerful statistics. Lastly, as I mentioned, don't forget the mobile calls. 30 billion calls were generated by search in 2013. That is a massive, there's been a massive increase, and in 2018, it's expected that 73 billion calls to businesses will be generated. Now, why is that? Well, first of all, mobile phone calls are incredibly important when you're looking at a high consideration purchase, right? Something that you're less comfortable with. Let's say insurance, let's say credit cards, or doing business with a business that you're less familiar with. So, when you work with your partners that are in the rooms with you, just make sure that the mobile call is getting full or partial credit for these conversions. That includes clicks that go from the mobile phone call to your website or any kind of call to your business. A mobile call is a mobile conversion. Now, this may sound a bit complicated to track, and it can be. But Google has built a suite of tools, and you have the partners in the room with you to help understand the impact these individual micro moments have in a single place. It all lives within AdWords. There are 2 tools that I really want to spend time on in AdWords. One is cross-device conversions. We talked about the micro moments and stitching them together, and then also attribution models within cross-device. Let's dive into these a bit deeper. Let's start with cross-device conversions, tying these micro moments together across devices. What is a cross-device conversion? It's a feature that helps you to understand how each of these micro moments can assist one another along the path to conversion. You might be wondering how we do it. Well, Google has a number of products that consumers love to use that have billions of users, like Chrome, Google Search, Maps, YouTube, and Gmail. We're able to see how consumers move across screens. And what we're able to do is take that intelligence within AdWords and help you to understand the impact of your own campaigns. Then there's attribution modeling, and this is the secret sauce. What is it? It helps us to assign value to each micro moment. Is it when I was in the car and I first started to think about buying the Pixel? Or was it when I was at lunch and I used the desktop? Or was it at home and on the tablet? Each of these has a value. What AdWords and attribution modeling can do is it can help you to invest smarter and understand the full impact of your ads. And we'll give credit where it's due. There are three key takeaways to remember, and these are three things that you should discuss with the partners. Mobile broke measurement as we know it. The desktop was super simple, and now we've adjusted and we've got the tools to do it. We now know consumers purchase across channels and screens, and we have to weave these micro moments together. Second, cross-device conversion and attribution models are the critical tools for understanding, measurement, and return. Lastly, work with your partner to gain a holistic view of how mobile affects your business. It is the first impression that you make with a customer. It's usually your mobile site and your mobile experience. Now, we're not just here to talk about marketing campaigns. We're here to talk about your primary business objective. Every single person in the room has something that they want to attain in 2017. Why are we dedicating an entire presentation to measurement? It's not the sexiest topic. Why? Because if you think about what your primary business objective is, now that we can measure things very, very effectively, we can actually create an advertising and a marketing campaign and strategy that will support your primary business objective. There are plenty of businesses doing this today, and those that are tying the primary goal of their business to what they're doing in AdWords are 3 times more likely to hit their goals. Measurement's the key to this. The Google partners who are with you, they're the experts. They can help you build the campaigns, measure the impact. They're here to help you achieve your primary business objective. They pass strict qualifications and certifications, and I really encourage you to take some time after the presentation and talk to them and see how you can work together with them. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff, for telling us a bit about the evolution of measurement and introducing the concepts of cross-device and attribution. What I'd like to do now is take a moment to highlight one of the things in particular that you mentioned about our Google partners, and that's the badge that they've earned. Now, you might be wondering, what does that actually mean? Well, the badge means a couple of things. It first means that they're following our advertising best practices. Second, that they're AdWords certified. Third, that they manage a significant AdWords investment with us. And 4, that they've proven their ability to help businesses like yours succeed online time and time again. We firmly believe that our partners are qualified to help you with your advertising, which is why we've awarded them with this badge and let them host these events. With that said, I'd like to introduce our next presenter, Kevin Cho. Kevin Cho is one of our product experts here at Google, and he'll spend some time diving deeper into measurement and attribution, including some tips and strategies that you can implement with your partners. The floor is all yours, Kevin.
Thanks for the introduction, Aaron. I want to start with a quick recap. As Jeff mentioned, because of mobile, the customer journey has changed dramatically, and we need to think differently about the way we're measuring our campaigns. Namely, we need to measure across screens to account for the role of mobile, even if that's the final purchase. Even if the final purchase doesn't happen on a mobile device, we need to measure across channels, taking into account other valuable actions like in-store visits. We also need to measure mobile phone calls to track the way people are actually interacting with our ads. Google is continuously working to provide you with the tools necessary to adapt to this change. Today, we're going to chat about 2 of these tools: cross-device conversions to measure performance across different devices, and attribution models to help us move away from thinking only about the last click. Working with your Google partners to implement these solutions within your accounts will help you understand how your customers are interacting with you in a mobile-first world. Let's start by talking about cross-device conversions, or conversions that happened on a different device, browser, or environment than the one on which the ad click occurred. Again, widespread adoption of mobile phones created a new channel for advertising. However, this time advertisers expected the same level of clear and simple measurement that they had previously been achieving on desktop. But that wasn't quite feasible given how much this little piece of technology changed consumer behavior and the path to purchase. In a study we conducted in 2016, we found that 75% of online adults 18 to 54 start an activity on one device but continue to finish it on another. Cross-device conversions will allow you to have better insight into your consumers' multi-device behavior. Let's return to the example of how we might purchase a Google Pixel. Today, we might be taking a bus home and see that billboard of that new Pixel and decide to search for it on a mobile device, just to learn a little bit more about it. Later that day or week, we then decide that we want to purchase that phone by visiting the Google Store website directly. Let's take a look at how we would measure this particular purchase path. Traditionally, because that last interaction before the purchase did not come through an ad click, we wouldn't have given any credit to our ad campaigns. However, we inherently know that the search on mobile was valuable and influenced the decision to purchase. By looking at cross-device conversions, we're able to give conversion credit to clicks that we weren't previously accounting for, ultimately giving us a more accurate picture of multi-device consumer behavior. As Jeff mentioned, although no measurement tool can give you 100% accuracy in their measurement of multi-device behavior, Google is uniquely positioned to provide you the most precise picture of the value your digital advertising is created. Google has 7 products with over 1 billion signed-in users, meaning we're present at every point of the customer journey. We're uniquely poised to provide the most holistic view of your consumer's purchasing path. Specifically, only 3 to 4 companies in the world have similarly sized signed-in user bases. With signed-in users, we'll have 100% confidence on our cross-device conversions. Additionally, by combining a custom algorithm made specifically for your account with this cross-device data, we'll be able to extrapolate the amount of conversions you're receiving from non-signed-in users with a 95% confidence interval. That's the same level of statistical significance required for scientific research papers. In conclusion, measuring multi-device behavior is vital for you to understand your customers in 2017. Work with your Google partners to make sure you've enabled conversion tracking across your devices, are promoting all useful touchpoints in the purchase path, including calls, in-store visits, and app downloads, and ultimately optimize your campaigns based off of this data to deliver the maximum ROI from your digital ad spend. Now that we've discussed cross-device conversions, let's move on to attribution modeling. Mobile has created not only searches between multiple devices, but oftentimes has also lengthened the amount of touchpoints consumers make before making the purchase. We need to make sure that we're valuing all of those touchpoints when we think about our consumers in 2017. Before hopping into an example, I'll use an analogy to illustrate this point. Let's say you've just won an Oscar and are about to give your acceptance speech. Last click attribution would be the equivalent to only thanking your director in that speech, the last person who helped you win that award. You neglect to recognize your parents, your friends, your agent, and whoever else helped you in that long process it took to get you to the point where you are today. I think we can all agree that this isn't the most accurate representation of what got you on that stage. Now, if we go ahead and bring our discussion back to the world of digital advertising, let's say you set out to buy a gift for somebody and search for these terms on your path to purchase. First, you search for great tech gifts, and then after doing a little more research, you then search for highly rated tablets. Finally, you search for a Nexus 9 tablet right before converting, or in this case, purchasing a Nexus tablet. With a last-click attribution model, we'd only be crediting the keyword Nexus 9 tablet with conversions, neglecting the impact made by other keywords during that customer journey. By switching our attribution model, we can assign fractional credit to the different touchpoints. In this particular example with the position-based model, we'd assign more credit to your first and last touchpoints, perhaps your parent and your agent if we are thinking back to the Oscar example. Also note that the total amount of conversions we're reporting has not changed. All we've changed is what touchpoints we're assigning some credit to. And so far, this all sounds great. However, we realize that this can be a daunting change. Last-click attribution has been the status quo since the inception of digital advertising, and there's understandable hesitancy on how to go about addressing this change. AdWords attribution modeling is designed to make this change as easy as possible. First, actually making the changes within your account are very simple. We simply need to choose the preferred attribution model on each of our conversion actions. Also, as a quick note, AdWords attribution does take into account cross-device conversions. So we can make sure we're addressing the multi-device behavior we discussed earlier. Here's what this would look like in practice. Whereas the last click model would have attributed all value to the keyword Nexus 9 tablet in our gift search, a time decay model would assign fractional value to each keyword, giving more credit to keywords closer to the point of purchase. Alternatively, a linear model would simply give each keyword on that path to purchase equal credit. To dive a little deeper, here's an example of what this would look like when we take into account multi-device behavior. As mentioned, regardless of whether that search happened on desktop or mobile, we would be able to attribute value across the different searches. This is pretty typical of consumer buying habits. Research often happens on a mobile device, but the customer decides to purchase the item later when they're in front of a desktop. With last click models, all the conversion credit would have been given to the last desktop ad click, despite the mobile clicks being critical steps in the purchasing journey. All we're doing here is distributing credit where it's due. Switching your model away from last click will always give you a better understanding of the actual customer journey, but which attribution model you choose depends on your business model. For example, if you're launching a brand new product and want people to get to know you, you might skew towards a position-based attribution model to make sure we know how potential customers are first interacting with our brand. Conversely, let's say you're a car repair shop and you're more concerned about what people are searching for when they're in the market for your services. You might skew more towards a time decay model to value touchpoints right before people purchase. Work with your Google partners to figure out which model would work best for you. So far, all of the attribution models we've discussed are based off of a set of rules. First click will always attribute the full value to the first keyword, linear will attribute value evenly across all keywords, and so on and so forth. For larger accounts with significant conversion data, Google has also introduced data-driven attribution. If available in your account, data-driven attribution paints the clearest, most objective picture of success within the account. Let's return to our previous example of buying a gift. Let's say we know that when a person makes all three of these searches, their conversion rate is 3%. Conversely, if they start their consumer path by searching highly rated tablets instead of great tech gifts, they convert at 2%. What we then know is that the search for great tech gifts adds 1% to the probability of a conversion. By applying this sort of logic to hundreds or thousands of customer journeys, our algorithms can paint a more accurate picture about what's most effective in your advertising campaigns. Data-driven attribution looks both at converting journeys and non-converting journeys, ultimately calculating the actual contribution of each keyword in your account and optimizing for the best performing ones across the conversion path. The attribution model will allocate conversion credit based on each keyword's incremental contribution towards conversions. Whatever the attribution model, moving away from last-click attribution is fundamental for you to succeed in a multi-device, multi-channel consumer journey. Work with your Google partners to figure out which attribution model is right for you. You'll be able to see the data for each attribution model before you choose your model. And you can choose different models for each of your conversion types. Thank you all for your time, and now I'll hand it back over to Aaron.
Great. Thank you so much, Kevin. It's really amazing to see the impact that measuring and attributing your campaigns properly can have. For our last few minutes, I'd like to switch gears and host a live Q&A session here with our presenters. We've been keeping an eye on the questions that you've asked through Twitter, and now we'll take some time to answer as many of those as we can. So let's go ahead and get started. The first question here is from Mike in Texas. He asked, what are the minimum requirements for data-driven attribution? You mentioned you have to have a large account, but how large?
Yeah, so specifically within the account, we would need 800 conversions and 20,000 clicks. So it is quite a bit of data, but it's that level of data that really gives us the confidence that our attribution model will be accurate.
Okay, great. Thanks for the context there.
For sure.
Next, we have a question from Rhonda in Washington. She asked, how long will it take to see results from a new attribution model in my conversion columns?
Sure. So this really depends on your specific business, right? So it really depends on how long it takes somebody to make a purchase after they make that first click. So typically, most businesses, we see kind of a 3 to 5 day window being that normal period that you want to let it run before taking a look at your results. That being said, there are definitely businesses with longer sales cycles, and for those type of clients or those type of accounts, you want to have a longer period of time to test.
That makes a lot of sense.
Sure.
Our next question comes from Lucas in Seattle. Lucas asked, how long is the look-back window for estimated cross-device conversions?
Sure. So as a default, we have a 30-day look-back window, which means we'll look back for a period of 30 days to see whether that click led to a conversion. That being said, we do understand that some businesses have shorter sales cycles, and so you can actually shorten that to 7 days if that's something that's more preferable for you.
Got it. That makes sense. Next, the next question we have here is from Melissa. She's writing us from New York. She said, conversion tracking is a difficult subject, and I'm not even sure where to begin. What should I be asking my partner as a first step of understanding the impact of my campaigns? I'll turn that one to you, Jeff.
Well, I mean, I think it goes back to what Kevin was saying. I mean, each business has a different consumer path, right? Some are longer and some are shorter. Some have more micro moments and some have fewer micro moments. And although data-driven attribution provides us with really, really good guidance, I think it's important that we understand what the primary business objectives are, what the consumer path looks like. There are default, as Kevin mentioned, there are default settings in AdWords that are obviously informed by many years of running campaigns and an immense amount of data. But you do have the flexibility to set up AdWords to meet your specific business needs.
Got it. Thank you for that. The next question comes from Agency Entourage, located in Dallas. They asked, what are other tools besides AdWords to measure micro moments? Do either of you like to take that one?
I mean, I think micro moments isn't really just purely about measurement. I think it's just a way to think about your business and marketing as a whole. That consumer path, I think, with any type of advertising you're doing, you want to be thinking about how you're affecting them. This can be across other digital platforms, but also if you're thinking about traditional media, you should be thinking about what type of actions they're doing while they're consuming that media. For example, if somebody is watching an ad on TV, they might search for you on a mobile device. That is something we consider a micro moment and something we want to be cognizant of.
Yeah, and I'll add, that's right, Kevin. I'll add that, there are, as you mentioned in your presentation, there are only a few companies that actually have the scale to get the data set so that we can understand cross-device conversions and attribution, because it requires a big data set to do it with confidence. As you talked about marrying traditional and digital, there are lots of companies out there that are providing systems that can be somewhat customized for your needs. There are software as a service. Google has one with Attribution 360, and there are many others out there. Traditional media mix modeling still exists, and now taking traditional media mix modeling and measuring what happens with digital, you can get a clear picture across your entire marketing investment, unlike what we've ever seen before.
Great, and that actually ties in nicely to another question that we just received, and that is Adam from Utah asked, how does measurement help companies that don't sell online at all?
That's a great question, Adam. And this, having worked with companies that, they're really consumer goods that are sold through other channels. I'm actually visiting one next week, and one of the challenges that we're trying to help them with is how can they measure through their channel partners? Well, first and foremost, you still need to be there for the micro moments. If you have a co-op relationship with those retailers, that's one way to tie those investments to the purchases that happen within their systems, whether it's a big traditional plus digital attribution system or things that they're working that are just digital only. I would highly recommend that you also, whenever you're selling through channels, have a very open relationship to see the impact that investments that you're making that may not happen within your co-op relationship with them. Whatever investments you're making in digital, ask them for the means to have sales data through your stores or through their stores or through the different channels that they have. One way to see the lift, and I've done this a few times with advertisers, is to run a market test. Run digital in some markets and don't run digital in other markets, and then compare the sales lift. I would highly encourage you to work with someone that's done it before, because you have to make sure that you're making the right level investment, that you're engaging with enough customers so that you'll actually get the read. But this is a proven practice in advertising.
I'd also love to just note that, and a quick plug for another Google product, we have some online to offline measurement solutions as well. And so we know a lot of people are trying to drive people into stores or, let's say a barbershop, trying to drive them in there, and that purchase might not necessarily happen online. We are working on making sure that we can track things like store visits using data from your mobile device again. And so while there are definitely a lot of different channels that we can be thinking about when we go about measuring, there are other tools within the Google ecosystem as well to help you with your other measurement goals as well.
And it is, as we mentioned in the presentation, it's really tied to the mobile device.
Exactly.
The mobile device is connecting what's happening online within the store, and there are technologies that can show that if somebody clicked on a Google search ad, that they did visit the store within a particular time period.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty amazing considering what we talked about with traditional advertising and not knowing what drove folks into store and ultimately to purchase. We've come a long way.
It sure sounds like we have. The next question that we have here is from Garrick in Birmingham. He asked, how does attribution affect my keyword selection?
Sure. So I think with keywords, and one of the benefits of AdWords overall is that you're constantly A/B testing. If anything, I think you guys should probably be going through the same process and trying to test out new and different keywords. What attribution modeling will help you with is finding out whether those keywords are effective or not. One classic example that I like to talk about is the difference between branded and non-branded keywords. A lot of times you'll see better performance with branded keywords just because it's indicative of somebody who's further along that purchasing path.
What is a branded keyword for those folks who don't know?
For sure. So for Google, if we were to say the Nexus 9 tablet, a Nexus 9 tablet would be that branded keyword, as opposed to great tech gifts. That's a non-branded keyword that you might still want to run on. By having that attribution models in place, we'll have a better idea of whether that great tech gifts keyword is actually providing value for our digital marketing campaigns.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, a couple more questions here. The next one is from the Reister Agency. They asked, can you elaborate on what click-to-call measurement is? Does that affect VoIP or voice over IP? Would you like to take that one, perhaps?
Sure. I'm frankly not a call expert, so this is another thing that you might want to circle back with your Google partners with. But in terms of click-to-call measurement, especially on the mobile side of things, if you look at the ad format, especially for Google, you'll be able to actually click on a button just to call people. And this is because we looked at the way people actually interact with mobile ads and the way they interact with mobile devices, and they don't always necessarily want to go to a website. So click-to-call is a way for us to measure the amount of people who are actually clicking that click-to-call button as opposed to visiting a website or inputting a number somewhere else.
And if you do happen to work with, maybe this was the genesis of this question, work with a phone provider that routing calls and into a call center, we have worked with some of these providers. There's data there in terms of what close rates are and how long people have been on the phone, helping to educate the person on the line about the product. So there is data there. That can be married outside of the AdWords system, but we also have created a mechanism where in some cases, depending on your provider, that can be included within Google Analytics, for instance. So there are ways to do it. It's not as turnkey as what Kevin was talking about. It's really easy if it all goes through the AdWords system, but for those that have invested in a call center, there are mechanisms by which you can do this.
Okay, that makes sense. We have time for one more question here. That is, what are some good tips on picking the right attribution model? Is linear a good place to start? Can I change it later on? Where do I begin here?
I'll start and then Kevin can add to this. I'll tell you a story. I met with the CMO of a solar panel company, and he was an AdWords expert, and sitting down with him, and solar panels, very high consideration purchase, and we sat down, and he didn't have quite enough conversions for data-driven. It's a relatively new company. They're really just getting their marketing strategy in place, and we talked about it, and he said, when I think about it, I don't necessarily want to go completely last click. That doesn't make any sense because it's high consideration. First click certainly doesn't make sense. And what we have is what's called time decay. And time decay is actually a pretty logical way because there's not a ton of risk. And it actually can be a good thing to do for a short period of time, let's say 30 or 60 days, and just see the impact that it has. If you have data-driven attribution, you can't argue with the data. It'll provide really, really good guidance for you. If it's selecting between the models that you can, independently make a choice on, I'd encourage you to get together with your Google partners, really understand the micro moments and the path to purchase, and then pick one and, have the philosophy that you want to test, learn, and iterate.
Right.
Does that make sense, Kevin?
Absolutely. I definitely echo that sentiment, Jeff. It really just depends on what your business goals are and what the business goals are for that particular conversion action. So when you're looking at a business, you can look at the business overall, but there are also, some conversion actions, maybe calls you want to be, have some more focus on things that happen closer to the purchase. Maybe there are other more brand-focused conversion actions that might make sense to have a different conversion action. What we should really be doing is thinking about why we're measuring what we're measuring, and what part of the funnel that's really talking about, and that's going to really inform what type of attribution model you're going to want to choose for your account and for your conversions.
That makes a lot of sense. And again, just to reiterate, your partners can help you with this. They are experts in this domain. They've done this before. You can turn to them for advice on this. And that's all the time that we have for questions today. While we couldn't get to each and every one of them, we did our best to touch on the topics that we saw most often on Twitter. I'd like to thank Jeff and Kevin again for joining us to present, and to all of you who tuned in from across North America. We hope you learned a few things during our broadcast today. As a reminder, the Google partners in the room are experts on the topics that we covered, and they're ready to assist you with your online advertising needs. So thanks again for spending time with us, and on behalf of the entire partners team in Mountain View, I hope you enjoy the rest of your week.